I'm not sure what class this is, but this is Sugya Gimel, Daf He, Amud Aleph. We're going to be doing the entire Sugya today. And here's the way I'm going to go about it. I will start by reading the Sugya and explaining it, as I always do. The first half, I don't have that many chidushim on, meaning we'll explain the first half, but the second half, which is agadic material, I do have some chidushim on from my father, alav shalom. And what we'll do then is we'll read it, we'll explain it, and then we'll go back and look at it a second time more deeply. But we'll start with the first part, which is Ibaya Lehu. So if you all have the place, Ibaya Lehu, and I'm going to open up the Surata Dishmateta or Dishmata, and you will recall that I refer to this as a Sugya Kefula Umkupelet. So let me just give you the basic structure of the Sugya, and I shared it with the group. If you're on the WhatsApp group, you would see that I shared this Sugya as well, the Surata Dishmata with the correct Girsa. But there's two major parts. The first major part has two subparts. We're now going to be reading the first subpart, which starts with an Ibaya Lehu. This is a question raised in the yeshiva, and it's a halachic question, and it's related to the topic that we were studying before. It was a halachic question, a specific question on the topic of Betula Nised Leyom Revi'i. And this first subpart will have a question and two answers. The second subpart will. So I'm sorry. Let me go take a step back. This first subpart would have a beraita, a question on the beraita, and two answers. The second subpart will have a beraita, a question on the beraita, and two answers. Okay, so that's the structure of the first major. Let's call it major part A. Major part A, the structure, two subparts, and I just described the two subparts. So it's really like when you have the structure, it makes it easier to follow the sugya and to see where we're going and where we're coming, as opposed to just kind of like reading and reading and reading. All right. So let's do it. So let's begin. Ibaya lehu betula niset barbi'i ונבעלת ברביעי ולה חיישינן לאקרורי דעתה או דילמה בתולה ניסל ברביעי ונבעלת בחמישי דחיישינן לאקרורי דעתה. All right. So we know that the Mishnah says, and it's important, until now we've kind of been conflating two topics. The two topics that have kind of been not brought into fine resolution is topic one, when does the Nisu'im take place? Matai machnisa lachupa, matai konsa. Topic two, when does the Be'ilah take place? Now if you look at the Mishnah, it says Betula Niset. It says Betula Niset leyom revi'i. It doesn't say anything about the Be'ilah, right? If you go to the Tosefta, which we were studying in Daf Gimel, Amud Bet, the Tosefta on this Mishnah, it has about Konsa, right? It says, it's at least about Konsa with respect to the Almana, let's say. So it goes into the question of Konsa a little. But until now, we haven't dealt with the question directly. So the question here is as follows. Given that the halacha is Betula Niset Barbi'i, but the question is, Matay Niv'elet? There's two possibilities. One possibility is that, for example, you would have the wedding Wednesday night. That's Niset Barbi'i. And then, subsequent to the wedding, there would be the Be'ilah that night, of course, Niv'elet Barbi'i. Now, and I'm sorry, I was, when I said Wednesday night, I was thinking, of course, Wednesday, Hebrew Wednesday, or Leyom Revi'i, which of course is for us Tuesday night. So I'm going to make a switch now. So the switch is I'm now going to be talking in terms of our secular English semantics. So I'm doing the switch now. So one possibility is that the wedding takes place Tuesday night, and the Be'ilah takes place Tuesday night. That's Nised, that follows the Mishnah. Betula Nised Leyom Revi'i, right? Everybody clear? How Tuesday night satisfies that? The Niv'ayelet Barbi'i, and in that case, the Be'ilah will be Tuesday night. Now, that would be possible if we say La Hayshina Li'Ikrure Da'ata. If we say that we're not concerned that the husband will calm down. Okay? In other words, we are concerned about the fact that im lo masala betulim, then he should go to betin and deal with it properly, whatever the legal consequences of the fact that she was not a betula. You have to deal with it. Should we be concerned about the fact that, Tuesday night, the betin is not till Thursday morning? By that time, she would have made him a good finjan achwe, honey, I wanted to tell you, my parents would not have let the wedding go through, whatever, 1,000,001 excuses. I'm having my own finjan now. Right? So perhaps, no, we're not going to be chosheshin. This person is going to follow the halacha. He signed a ketuvah. The ketuvah says she's a betula. She's not a betula. There's an error in the ketuvah, and it could be legal. There are legal consequences to that, right? One possibility. La hayshina likrule data. Second possibility. Odilma betula nised barvi'i benit'elet b'hamishi de hayshina likrule data. The second possibility is that we say no. When we say betula nised barvi'i or betula nised liyom revi'i, we mean what we call Wednesday, sometime before sunset. There will be the nisuim, konsala chuppah, and the actual be'ilah will take place after sunset, right? So it would come out that the betula nised liyom revi'i v'niv'ayelet lelel hamishi or leyom hamishi, right? Why would we be makpidim on that? The hayshinan le'ikrure data. So you understand the two possibilities? So this is a be'ayah. This is a be'ayah that was raised in the yeshiva of the Emoraim to deal with, or to get clarity on when the be'ilah takes place. Again, till now we know when the nisuim takes place, but we never said when the be'ilah takes place. Questions or comments? Okay, so we said that the first subpart is going to have a baraita, a question, and two answers. Here's the baraita.
Tashema. Oh, sorry, one question, if I may.
Please.
Which yeshiva, is this Eretz Yisrael, should we assume? So, Ibaya Lehu,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my father, alav hashalom, was of the opinion that this was Yeshivat Surah. Now,
okay.
I'll tell you why he was of that opinion. And I understand. I'll tell you what his thinking was. In fact, suspend the question for a moment. I think it will be easier for me to explain why my father said it was Yeshivat Surah in a few minutes. And if I don't explain it, then please stop me and say, hey, you didn't explain it, please do so. So I will be happy to do so. But here it says.
So I noticed that, so usually when an Emora asks a ba'aya, especially a formal one, so lehu, right, to the whole yeshiva, he's supposed to have done his homework. And there should not be a Tanaitic source that weighs in favor of one side of the ba'aya over the other. Here we have a baraita, but it's the Tane bar kapara. Tane is the lowest form, the lowest category of baraita. So I understand why the Emora presenting the ba'aya was not responsible necessarily to know this Tane. And so although it's a ba'aya de ifsheta based on this, he did not necessarily know that. So that's why he asked it in the first place.
Yes. And Detane bar kapara exactly means this is a baraita was in the collection of Baraitot of Bar Kapara, not necessarily authenticated by the yeshiva in Surah or from Bedita, or maybe in this case it would be Nehar De'ah. This is before yeshiva from Bedita, so it would be yeshivat Nehar De'ah, theoretically authenticating this Baraita. This Baraita, as Hakam Aharon pointed out, was not authenticated, and therefore it is excusable that when they're asking the question, let's say Yeshivat Surah, the Bayaleu, they didn't know this Baraita. Somebody knew it. Somebody knew it. So somebody says, Tashema, Detane Bar Kapara, whoever that somebody is. Okay. Tashema, Detane Bar Kapara. Betula Nisad Barbi'i, Benib'elet Bahamishi, Ho'il Vene'emra Bo Berach Al-Darim. So if you look at the Yerushalmi on our Mishnah, you will see this Tane Bar Kapara. This is right out of the Yerushalmi. And it says, and in the Yerushalmi, unlike the Mishnah which says, Mateh Betula Niset, Bar Kapara adds, Mateh Betula Nib'elet. It's explicit. Betula Niset Barbi'i, Venib'elet Bahamishi, Ho'il Vene'emra Bo Beracha Ladarim. He says the hakpada is that the be'ilah should be on Hamishi, on Thursday night, right? So you would have again, Thursday night Hebrew, Wednesday night English, right? So the wedding would be, let's say, Wednesday before sunset, and then Machisala Bo'ala Wednesday night after sunset, right? Why? What's the reason? The reason is because for Bar Kapara, the question of Beracha Ladarim was important. We know that on Yom Hamishi there was a special Beracha Ladarim, and so we want the young couple, hopefully young couple, to get the Beracha of the Dagim. Okay, almost an astrological reason. Okay, not exactly astrology, but you understand, right? Almanan, he said, and he also clarifies the question of Almana. The Mishnah said, Almanan, he said, Hamishi, it never said Matani B'Elet, comes to Kapara and says, B'Elet Bashishi. Why? So that's a Baraita of Bar Kapara. On this, the yeshiva makes the following diuk. Ta'ana mishum beracha. What's the reason that Bar Kapara was makpid? In the case of Almana, she should get married Wednesday night, Hamishi. In the case of Almana, she should get married Thursday night, Shishi. What was the reason for that hakpada? I'm sorry, I said get married. I'm not speaking accurately. I'm going to repeat myself. What's the reason, according to Bar Kapara, that in the case of Betula, the Be'ilah takes place Wednesday night, Hamishi? What's the reason, according to Bar Kapara, that in the case of Almana, the Be'ilah takes place Thursday night, Shishi? Mishum beracha, whether beracha ladarim or beracha laadam. But mishum ikrure da'ata la hashinan. Bar Kapara should have said, why am I of the opinion that at least in the case of Betula, she should be nive'elet b'hamishi? I'm of that opinion because otherwise she would be there would be ikrure da'ata. He doesn't say that. He says, what's the reason? Because of beracha. Okay. Before we even continue, does anybody have a problem with this reasoning? I know that I do, but I'm curious if anybody else does. Right. It doesn't make sense, and correct me if I'm wrong. There's something wrong here in the reasoning. There's two ways to understand Betulani said Leyom Reve'i. One way was Yeshivat Fom Bedita. Yeshivat Fom Bedita, it says, Madua Betulani said Leyom Reve'i, because of Ta'anat Betulim. Very nice. Bar Kapara in Eretz Yisrael had a different reason. Madua Betulani said Leyom Reve'i, so that the Be'ilah could be B'Hamishi at night, and therefore the Beracha Ladagim. These two answers are different answers. Meaning, why would Bar Kapara be Hoshesh for Ikrure Da'ata? Ma'ina Ikrure Da'ata for Beracha Ladagim? That's my question. First of all, if you don't agree with my question, tell me your question is incorrect for the following reason. I'm open, but I just want to make you aware of an intellectual problem that I encountered when I studied the sugya. Again, you're taking Bar Kapara. Bar Kapara never said anything about Ta'anat Betulim. The Ta'anat Betulim comes from the Tosefta. Bar Kapara gave a completely different answer. Bar Kapara is Beracha L'Dagim, or Beracha L'Adam. Why would you bring Bar Kapara as a source for Ikrurei Data? Of course,
he's not commenting one way or the other on it.
I mean, of course he's not Choshesh Ikrurei Data. He never said Ta'anat Betulim. He said Beracha.
He doesn't, right, that's right. So because he says, Eiled Bahamishi, that doesn't negate anything about Ikrurei Data. He could also agree with Ikrurei Data. That's not the subject of that Barata. So the diuk doesn't really, it's an illogical diuk.
Right. It's a non sequitur.
That's right. It doesn't, there's no way to assume that this Barata addresses or not addresses Ikrurei Data. It happens not to be contradictory, but that's all you could say.
Yeah. So first of all, I think the reason my father said this was in Yeshivat Surah is because it was Yeshivat from Bedita that emphasized the question of Ta'anat Betulim, number one. And this is the way I understand it. And I believe my father, I believe, and I don't know 100%, that when he taught me this sugya, when he taught the sugya, he made the following observation. He said that there are some sugyot in the Gemara where the purpose of the sugya is to unify the opinion of the Yerushalmi with the opinion of the Bavli. Mm-hmm. And that this is one of those sugyot. So let me explain to you. And this has to do with the idea of text. When you're presented, when you're the Bet Din and you're presented with the text, you're going to look at that text and you're going to interpret the text in terms of whatever contemporary issues that you're dealing with and in terms of whatever contemporary considerations that you have. Now, when you're looking at the Beraita Bar Kapara, and this is me speaking now, you can look at it through the lens of the Bavli. You don't need to assume that there's a disagreement. You may make that assumption. You can say, look, I think Bar Kapara disagree. There's no evidence for that. All we know is that for Bar Kapara, what was important is Beracha. But to make a jump and say that it's not logical, as I said, it's not logical. The conclusion is not logical, but it is textual. It is interpreting the text, the Baraita Bar Kapara, from the lens of the Hachamim in Babel, who do consider the question of Ta'anat Betulim to be relevant. And that is a proper interpretation. Just like the Hachamim can look at any a shitar and say, here's what the shitar means. Unless there's evidence to the contrary, right? You can't, unless there's textual evidence to the contrary. But there is no evidence that Bar Kapara disagreed. More than that, if you look at the Yerushalmi, it brings Rabbi Elazar, and this is Rabbi Elazar bar Pedat, and he brings the opinion of the Bavli in the Yerushalmi. And there's no point in the Yerushalmi where there's they're trying to pit one opinion against the other opinion. And that's the idea of unifying the Yerushalmi with the Bavli. So this sugya, in my father's opinion, was from Yeshivat Surah, where they attempt to unify the sugya from Bedita, Shemuel, Ta'anat Betulim, the Tosefta, with Bar Kapara, and show how the two things work hand in hand. And we're going to interpret the Baraita Bar Kapara in a way which conforms with the Yerushalmi. That's the idea of this thing. Yes, Eddie?
Well, if I could ask a question here, the Mishnah does explicitly talk about Ta'anat Betulim, Shem Hayel Ta'anat Betulim Hayamashkim Lebetin.
Yeah.
So even if they weren't necessarily focusing on that in the Talmud Yerushalmi, it must have been at least a concern on the radar.
Right.
It's in the Mishnah.
So in the earlier classes, one thing that we did was we analyzed the Mishnah. And it's very clear that the original version of the Mishnah did not have this. And that this is actually from the Tosefta, a latter edition. And you can look, if you just look at YouTube, class number 1, I already make that textual analysis. It was from my father. I mean, again, I keep mentioning my father. I think my father used to tell me, you don't have to mention me all the time, because everybody knows that you're teaching my Torah. Because there was a Chacham that once mentioned something without mentioning his teacher, and then somebody said, you don't have to mention his teacher, it's okay, because everybody knows that what you're saying is from him, but okay. There's that. All right? All right, so we said we're going to have a baraita, we're going to have a question on the baraita, and we're going to have 2 answers. So now that we have the baraita of Tani Bar Kapara, we're going to have a question. Now the premise of the question is, as Chacham Aaron pointed out earlier, this baraita was never authenticated. So we can try to dispute it, refute it. So the question is going to be as follows. Shalom, you good? Yeah? All right. All right. Iachi almana namet ba'el b'chamishi ho'il v'ne'emra bo beracha ladagim. So if this is the case, if you're saying that beracha ladagim is important, why not be consistent? Right? It's always in Jewish law, we want to have consistency, right? So why are you creating a dissonance between? Because the Mishnah says Almanani said Yom Revi'i. Fair enough. So in that case, Yom Revi'i would mean she would have to have the sunset on Wednesday, the wedding on Wednesday before sunset. I'm sorry, and the Be'ilah Wednesday night after sunset. In the case of Almana, she can also be Le'yom Hamishi. Let her have the wedding Wednesday night and be Nivelet Wednesday night. And like that, they'll be Beracha Ladagim. They'll both get Beracha Ladagim. Why do we have to create a dissonance between Betula and Almana? Le'inyan the Nisuim, we understand why there's a dissonance, but Le'inyan the Be'ilah, why should there be a dissonance? So Iachi Almana Nameti Ba'el B'chamishi, right? Or even Emna Beracha Ladagim. So the answer Beracha. So answer number 1. There's going to be 2 answers. Answer number 1. There's a certain advantage to the beracha that Hashem gives to Adam over the beracha that Hashem gives to the dagim. It's an important point. And we're going to see this in the second major part, in major part B of the sugya. We're going to see this, but for now I'll make an observation. If you look at ancient pagan civilization, a man was always obsessed with the animals, so for example, Pocahontas, the American Indian, they always wanted to be like the animals. They felt that the animals, they have certain powers and certain strengths, and it was like a shevach to be like an animal, so you would dress up like an animal and you would become the animal, right? And you saw the if you can sing with all the colors of the wind, whatever that even means, but just try it and you'll see how it's going to be spectacular results, I think. So we see that in Judaism we didn't have this idea. There was a beracha dagim, and no question, dagim, a tremendous proliferation, and yet in Jewish thinking, beracha de adam adif aleh. We don't look at the animals with envy at all. If anything, we feel that the beracha that Hashem gave to Adam was superior to the beracha that Hashem gave to the dagim. Okay, so that's an important point just that I want to make now, but we're going to discuss it more in the second major part of the sugya. Okay.
I think, so Velikovsky, who was a psychiatrist, but also did research in science, etc., he has a book called Mankind in Amnesia. And it's a similar idea to what René Girard has called in his book, Things Which Have Been Hidden Since the Beginning of the World. So I think the Goyim, post-Mabul, whatever happened, and society didn't develop like we thought it would, but it ended up with Nimrod and dictatorships, etc. Pagan society assumes that man is corrupt. And you see that again in Christianity. So they want to go back to nature. And many of the woke people want to emulate nature, like the Druids or the modern Wiccans. The women, they go out on Rosh Chodesh and they dance naked in the moonlight. they're always wanting to reconnect with nature because they don't trust man. Well, I think the Torah is the only society that says planet Earth could be a great place, but you have to have the Selim Elohim. And if you negate the Selim Elohim, Allah, the Ais Hadak, and you're completely engrossed in Tov Bara, yes, society will devolve and it'll be horrible. But we're offering an alternative. You don't have to have saints. You don't have to have Jesus. You don't have to have dictators. You don't have to have dictators in collusion with Jesus or the representative of Jesus called the Pope. You don't need any of that, but you have to stop it or you'll never have mankind, human society as designed. And I think they're always struggling with that.
Yes. They, and Jordan Peterson talks about the fact that if you listen to their rhetoric, they hate human civilization. They actually wish. I think Bill Gates talks how there's way too many people in the earth, and then Jordan Peterson analyzes that from the psychological perspective. What do you mean there's way too many people on the earth? And then you see the policies they're trying to implement will lead to the eradication of many people. I mean, so this obsession, for example, with global warming. If you look at the global warming pattern today, it's exactly as it was in the warm period during the Middle Ages. I mean, literally this, and the ideas that man is somehow a blight on the planet. By us, no, and we're going to see that soon. So, the second half of this year is going to be amazing. So let's finish the first half so we can get to the second half. Okay, yeah. So that was the first answer to the question. משום שקדו. והנה משום שקדו. The second answer is משום שקדו. There is a consideration that we have not studied until now. That consideration in the case of almana is what's called shakedu. And that's going to be the topic for subpart 2. So again, we're in major part A, subpart 2 is going to deal with the question of shakedu. All right, so now what are we going to do? We're going to have a beraita. Again, literally, you see the parallelism? Beraita, a question, 2 answers. All right, so now you have the whole sugya almost in your mind, very simple. So now we're doing subpart 2. Tanya. מפני מה אמרו אלמנה נישאת בחמישי ונבעלת בשישי. What's the reason that the Mishnah says Almana Niset b'chamishi? If you look at the Mishnah, it gives us the reason ta'anat betulim she'anat ta'anat betulim ha'mashkim lebetim, but that only applies to betula niset le'yom levi'i. It doesn't apply to Almana Niset or Almana le'yom chamishi, right? So madua Almana Niset le'yom chamishi ונבעלת בשישי, שאם אתה אומר תבעל בחמישי למחר משכים לאומנותו והולך לו. If, for example, let's say we would have the wedding on with the betula, and let's say the wedding of the almana will be Wednesday night. So Wednesday night, technically, that's almana niset liyom chamishi. Great, but he's going to be boiled on Wednesday night. Okay, so what's going to happen now? The next day is Thursday. she's an almana. I'm gonna miss a day of work for her, right? So this is the way people used to think in antiquity. It's a fact, whatever, like it or not like it, but this is the way people are thinking. If she's a betula, okay, that's different. Almana, she was already married, or I don't know what. So he says, lemachar, mashkim leumanuto ve'olech lo. I'm going to work, right? Just make sure they have dinner ready for me on time, or otherwise I'm going to get angry, right? So now we see the law of shakedu. Shakedu chachamim al tekana benot Israel sheyeh sameach immaha shelosha yamim. Hamishi v'shabbat, ve'erev shabbat, v'shabbat. So that's why chachamim insisted, and they were consistent, that you have to respect her properly. Benot Israel, you have to respect them properly. And therefore, if you have the wedding on Thursday, and then Bo'elota Thursday night, and then the next day it's already Erev Shabbat. Erev Shabbat is, you're not going to go to work now for half a day. If anything, you're going to go to the market, buy some things, then come home, right? But Shabbat, and then Shabbat you're with her. So like that, it's 3 days that you're with her. And then we have the takana, namely that it's going to be 3 days. You understand? Right. Ma'ika ben beracha leshakedu. So now we have a question and 2 answers. What is the legal consequence if you say that the reason is beracha as opposed to shakedu, right? You said beracha la adam. You said no, shakedu. Is there a legal consequence to whether you say it's beracha or shakedu? Now, I'm going to give you my explanation of this. And Chacham Aaron, I'm curious to hear if you agree with what I'm saying now. Not every gezerah, not every takana was dependent upon the reason for the gezerah, the reason for the takana. Indeed, many times the Chachamim don't tell us the reason. Or, as I learned from my father, many times they'll tell us the reason, but that's not the real reason.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in this case, they make a takana that yes, bo'elota Thursday night, bashishi. Bo'elota almana bashishi, niv'ailet bashishi. Okay. So, whatever we're doing now, whether the reason for that is shakedu or beracha, it doesn't make it's not going to change the law, right? So I believe. So what is the purpose of this exercise in the yeshiva? And I believe that this is part of the training of the young dayanim. That as part of the training of the dayanim, they wanted the dayanim to think in terms of what are the legal consequences of any particular rule that you want to make, or any particular gezerah that you want to make, or any particular ruling in a specific case. Meaning, the rulings of the hachamim have consequences. And when you make a ruling, you should always consider what the consequences are. So I view this type of back and forth reasoning, which they're saying what's the difference whether the reason is shakedu or beracha, as a type of exercise for the hachamim to train their ability to be aware of what they're doing. I mean, I just not to compare. I mean, not to compare in any way, but so here I'm in Israel, and there's Haredi rabbis who insist that serving in the army is some sort of avera. Now, you perhaps they believe that. I don't care, and I'm not a psychologist, but it has nothing to do with Jewish law. But the point is, it would be nice if before people spoke or made a particular ruling, they would consider the consequences of what they're saying. Right? There are consequences. You see, meaning Hachamim hizaharu b'divrechem. You can't just rule anything or think anything or say anything. You have to be very methodical and precise. And I think that's what they have this sometimes in the Gemara. Ma'ika ben or ma'ika ben. Halacha le'maaseh, if you look at Rambam, he doesn't say, if it's this and the halacha is like that. He completely ignores this. You understand? So that's my opinion. I don't know if anybody has a different opinion, but I think that's the way I understand ma'ika ben beracha le'shakedu. Yeah? Okay. Ika, so we said going to be two answers, right? Ika benaihu, Adam batel. One answer is Adam batel. If you have a situation where Adam is batel, he's not working, either he's unemployed or maybe he won lotto, I don't know what. He's Adam batel. So you say, anyway, make the wedding Wednesday night. Let him. So Almanani said Yom Hamishi. V'niv'alet b'Hamishi. Why not? He's batel. It's not like he's going to wake up the next day and he's going to go to work. He's not. He's going to be with her. So in that case, the consideration would be that let him get married earlier. That's one situation. Adam batel. Answer number 2. Inameh Yom Tov shechal liot be'erev Shabbat. Let's say that you have a situation where Yom Tov Chaliot Be'erev Shabbat. That means that Thursday night, it's already Yom Tov, right? Now normally we say he should be Bo'elota, he should be Almana Niv'elet B'Hamishim, It should be sorry, this would be Bashishi already. All right. Why? Because we want him to wake up the next day and to be with her. But here, he's not going to work. So let him get married the day before. Meaning let the Be'ilah be, instead of Thursday night, let it be Wednesday night. So she would be Almana Niset B'Hamishi B'Niv'elet B'Hamishi. And you say, oh, but the next day he's going to wake up and go to work. No, it's Erev Yom Tov. He's not going to wake up and go to work. The same way Erev Shabbat is not going to wake up and go to work. Erev Yom Tov is not going to wake up and go to work. So these would be the two nafkamina, whether you say the reason is for Beracha or whether you say the reason is for Shakidu. All right? And again, look at Rambam. I looked at Rambam. He doesn't distinguish. He doesn't say, when do we say Almana Niset B'Hamishi B'Niv'elet B'Shishi? Only in a regular situation. But if the Adam Batel, or if... no, it doesn't say it. He doesn't say it. You understand? That's it. That's the end of the major part A. You ready for the second major part B? Okay, good. Let me just get my notes, because I do have some notes here that I want to...
By the way, so number Ma'ikab ben Beracha l'Shakilu, I took this as for the structure. Yet because there is no maskana here, and as you Harambam doesn't derive any maskana from it, it suggests maybe that the real reason is the Beracha, not Shakilu, because there's these exceptions, but nobody does anything with that, halacha l'maaseh. So I thought they included it. As you say, it's part of the exercise in the yeshiva. Maybe it came up at the kala, or in the yeshiva, but not everything that comes up got into the sugya. Why did this particular question make it in through the editor's editing? For the structure, because we needed another question and answer.
Yes, an equally valid answer to the problem that I raised. Thank you. Yes. Okay, so now we are in major part 2, or major part B, let's call it. So major part B will have subpart 1 and subpart 2. Subpart 1 will be a derasha of Bar Kapara, followed by 3 questions. Subpart 2 will be a derasha of Bar Kapara, followed by 3 sources. We will have 1 source, then we will have an even more authoritative source, supporting, meaning 3, let me rephrase what I said. Subpart 2 will be a derasha bar kapara, followed by 3 sources confirming or affirming what bar kapara said in his derasha. The first source will be, I think it was, it'll be Al-Azhar, whoever it was, we'll see it. Let me a second. Okay. The first source will be the Al-Azhar. The second source will be a higher source, and then the third source will finally be a Tanur Rabbanan. That's it. So that's the. So it goes from least authoritative to most authoritative. You understand the point? All right. So let's start reading this now. And let me get my notes, as I said. Okay. Why that? Okay, we did. Okay. All right, so now we're starting. So as we said in the previous, in the first major, in major part A, we said that Deracha de Adam Adifa Leh, and the purpose of these derashot is to explain Madua Deracha de Adam Adifa Leh. This is really the goal of major part B. Darash bar kapara. Gedolim ma'aseh sadikim yoter mi ma'aseh shamayim ba'aretz. The actions of the sadikim are greater or more powerful, perhaps, than the ma'aseh shamayim ba'aretz. Right? God created the shamayim, God created the aretz. So if you look at ma'aseh sadikim, apparently it's gedolim, okay? And how do we know this? How do we know gedolim ma'aseh sadikim yoter mi ma'aseh shamayim ba'aretz? De'ilu b'ma'aseh shamayim ba'aretz ketib af yadi yaseda eres v'mini tpeha shamayim. The pasuk, in referring to the establishment of the eres, or in referring to the shaping of the shamayim, it uses yadi, one hand, or yamini, one hand. That's maaseh shamayim ba'aretz. ואילו במעשה ידיהם של צדיקים כתיב, מכון לשבתך פעלת אדוני, בקדש אדוני כוננו ידיך. In the case of the tzaddikim, we're talking about the Bet HaMikdash, it says, מכון לשבתך פעלת אדוני, but then, in that מכון לשבתך, בקדש אדוני כוננו ידיך. Your two hands, God, are going to establish the Bet HaMikdash. Now, I'm just saying, here it's understood. It's not even discussed. It's just a simple understanding that the Bet HaMikdash is built by man. It doesn't come flying out of the sky. There's a certain type of burut that has descended upon some of the rabbinic leaders of Am Yisrael. I'm not sure what the purpose or why that burut came, but it's here, and we see, and anybody who studies a little Gemara slightly b'daikanut, you see it. So it says this is Maaseh Tzadikim. It's specifically not Maaseh Shamayim Ba'aretz, but okay. I mean, at least this is a plausible explanation of how the Bet HaMikdash comes about, right? It's here. So, all right. Let's continue. Right. All right. So the correct Girsa is, I'm going to just, because it says, Heshiv Bavli Ahad v'Rabbi Chaya Shema, it would be a bit difficult to refer to Rabbi Chaya, the great Rabbi Chaya, who when Rabbeinu HaKadosh forgot some of the Mishnayot or the Halachot, he reminded him of the Halachot. It's a bit difficult to say, Heshiv Bavli Ahad v'Rabbi Chaya Shema, right? It's not the most respectful way to refer to a great Chacham like Rabbi Chaya. So if you look at the Kitvei Yad, it says Heshivani Bavli Ehad ve'Achya Shemo, or ve'Achya Shemo, right? Now, what this means, Heshivani Bavli Ehad ve'Achya Shemo, it means that this was. Don't forget, he's giving a derasha. Darash means in public. This is a public derasha. This wasn't just given, in the Bet Midrash to the Hachamim or to the Talmidei Hachamim. This was given as a public derasha. And since it was a public derasha, now we understand Heshivani Bavli Echad. On the spot, this Bavli, meaning Bar Kapara, is recounting how when he gave the derasha, there was a Babylonian guy in the derasha, and this Babylonian guy corrected him, right? So, and that's very Jewish, it's very Syrian, the Sephardim, the Pasuk says, what are you talking about? The Pasuk says this, right? Heshivani Bavli Ahad ve'Achya Shemo, ve'yabeshet yadav yasaru. It says ve'yabeshet yadav yasaru. The Yabasha were created by the hands of God, right? So it's two hands, not one hand. So that was the first question. Yado ketiv. No, it's kedi uchtiv. If you look at the ketiv, it's one hand. Meaning, and this is important to understand, it's not the maximum power of God. God is reserving. He's withholding. He's not exerting his full strength. Meaning, the fact that it's keri uchtiv and it's written with yado is to teach that God is not using the full, whatever yadayim means, whatever that means, but in this case it's not that. That's why it's ketiv yado. Yado ketiv. Question number 2. Veha ketiv yasaru. But it says, ve'yabeshet yadav yasaru. Yasaru is in plural form, right? Amar Rab Nachman bar Yitzhak Yaseru. Shei is actually the correct or the older Girsa is She Yaseru Esbe'otav, meaning the pasuk would be read as follows: Ve'yabeshet yadav sheyaseru esbe'otav. Right? Meaning the yabeshet was created by the yadav, right? And by the esbe'otav, right? Ve'yabeshet yadav, right? Ve'yabeshet yadav, which is yado, sheyaseru esbe'otav. So the plural form will be on the esba'ot and not on the yadav, right? So ve'yabeshet yadav yasaru, because the pasuk says kedichtiv ki yir'eh shamecha ma'aseh esbe'otecha. And this is something that my father wrote about, I believe, in writing. Writing and dissimulation. I don't remember if I have the correct title, or God and dissimulation. Maybe Hacham, do you remember the article I'm referring to? There was an article.
Yes, God as a writer or something, and then the subline is dissimulation or something like that.
Yes. So in that, it's actually a beautiful article, in the context of that article, he explains that the Isba'ot, no, actually, maybe this he explained to me personally. No, the Isba'ot, because it's writing, but no, I believe he explained this to me personally. Yeah, God as a writer, thank you. Omnipresence and the art of dissimulation, thank you for that. The Isba'ot, because very fine creation, right? The Yadayim is more coarse, but the Isba'ot, it can go into all types of details and finesse and create certain beautiful things, right? That's the idea of the esba'ot, right? So it would be the esba'ot of one hand, so to speak. You understand? Sheyaseru esba'otav. Kedichtiv, ki yir'eh shamecha, ma'aseh esba'otecha, yareh v'chol chamim asher konat, how beautiful everything is, and that's the esba'ot. Right? Metivi, and the final question. השמיים מספרים כבוד אל ומעשה ידיו מגיד הרקיע. השמיים מספרים כבוד אל, but it says מעשה ידיו. It says מעשה ידיו מגיד הרקיע. הכי כאמר. Now, I didn't like the word metivi, and I don't know why I didn't correct it in my book here, but it wasn't in the Ketav Yad. It didn't have metivi. I don't have the Ketav Yad with me because I'm not in my house, obviously. But I believe that when I did the
yes, in so I have the Machon HaTalmud HaYisraeli.
Yeah, how does it?
In the Girsa that they label Mem Haser, and the Girsa that they label Resh superscript Gimal Haser, and it was added in the margin. So it seems somebody later on put in Metivi, which is a little strange. You're asking Metivi from a pasuk,
right?
On another pasuk. That's not a superior source,
right?
Metivi is expressing a superior. So you have a pasuk in Tehillim chapter Het, and you don't like it, so you have a pasuk in Tehillim chapter 19, which you think is a superior trump card. But that's not right. That doesn't fit the definition of Metivi.
Exactly, correct. That's why I had a problem with this, and that's why I checked the Girsa, and I'm going to read to you what I have in my remember when I shared the, as I shared the Surat HaDishmata, Ve'haketiv. Beautiful. Ve'haketiv. Hashamayim misapinim kebod el, u'ma'aseh yad hamagid el-akiyah. It's a haketiv.
He has one manuscript that says that, what he calls Gimal superscript 56. Yes.
Ve'haketiv. Exactly. I'm going to make a note now in my. For some reason, I didn't do it in my personal Gemara. Beha ketiv. I'm going to do it now. Beha ketiv. Okay. Beha ketiv. All right. Beha ketiv. Okay. Beha ketiv. Hashamayim misapirim kavod el u'ma'aseh yadav magid el-akiyah. Hachi ka'amar. This is the intention of the pasuk. Ma'aseh yedehem shel tzadikim. Mi magid? Harakia, the Maaseh Adav refers to Maaseh Yadhem Shel Tzadikim. And who is the one that speaks of the Maaseh Yadhem Shel Tzadikim? The Rakia. Umayniu, how can the Rakia speak of the Maaseh Yadhem Shel Tzadikim? Matar, when it rains. Okay, we're going to explain what this means. As I said, right now I'm just kind of going through the sugya, just so we have this Surah Tishma'atab, and then we're going to go through it a second time and go into some very deep concepts. Darash bar kapara. Okay, that was it. That was the end of subpart 1 of major part B. That was it. Darasha, 3 questions. Very nice. Purpose of the Darasha, to speak about Ma'aseh Yadayim Shel Sadiqim. Second Darasha, subpart 2, Darash bar kapara. And this directly goes into the beracha of Adam. Darash bar kapara, may dichtiv, ve'atev tiheh lecha al azenecha. When it says ve'atev tiheh lecha al azenecha, because the pasuk says, this is in Kiteseh, it says ve'ayeh machanecha kadosh ve'lo yir'edecha elvat davar ve'ayeh machanecha kadosh. So therefore, you can imagine the goyim were filthy. I know it's not nice, and I know that we believe in humanism, and Rabbi Amos discusses humanism, but I'm personally I found the goyim to just be repulsive, right? I'm like, that's it. I'm at an age in my life where I'm not interested in being humanistic. You want to vote for Mamdani? Go for it. Do it. I would love to see all of you rioting in the streets, killing each other, and eventually cannibalizing each other. You deserve it, because the only reason you vote for Mamdani is because he's anti-Semite. There's no appealing thing about Mamdani other than the fact that he hates Jews and he hates Israel. So do it. Vote for him. Get what you deserve. Anyway, I become disgusted by the Goyim. I think Harambam, he was in France, and he discusses in one of his Igerot how the French houses, they were filthy, and they reeked from pork, right? They reeked from pig meat, right? Amash, the Gemara in Masechet Eruvim, it discusses the laws of Eruvim, and it refers to the residents of the Goyim as dir shel behemot. Amash, peshuto kemashma'o, dir shel behemot. Right? The halachic status of a goy residence is dir shel behemot. Okay. Perek Adar. Adarim and Aruchri, right? Can you do what do you do with the Nochri? How can you do Eruv with the Nochri, right? Anyway, I've become non-humanistic as I get older. Not as a philosophical, but as a practical idea. All right. So Darash bar kapara, so among the Ami said we're Machanecha Kadosh, so they would leave the Machaneh and they would go outside the Machaneh, and they had to have like a shovel. Right, so next to the sword, let's say you have like a belt, and you have like a sword, and you have like a shovel. All right, the hapartaba, right? Right. So because don't forget, when the Jewish people went to war, we believe the Shekhinah was with us, right? So you have to be kadosh. So that's part of the kedusha of Am Yisrael. By the way, just so you know, they use this pasuk, which is a very simple pasuk, and Peshat of the pasuk is not particularly subtle, to say that this is the source for why you have an azarat mechitza in the synagogue. And by the way, I want to say I'm really not against mechitza in the synagogue. I mean that 100%. I love the mechitza in the synagogue. I'm all for it. So please don't misunderstand me. But this is not a source for that. It's a minhag. I like the minhag. Sometimes, man needs to be alone. He's praying. He doesn't want to be distracted. He doesn't want to, okay, no problem. But I also want to be honest. Has nothing to do with that law. All right. So he says, Al tikre azenecha ela oznecha. So the derasha is, don't Al tikre azenecha, read it oznecha. Shimishma adam davar she'eno harun yaniach. It's esbe'otav. It's not esba'o, obviously. It's 2s. Minimum of 2 esba'ot, right? Yaniach esbe'otav be'oznav. So if you hear something that's inappropriate, you should put your fingers in your ears, and like this, you save yourself from whatever the inappropriate thing is, right? So that's a derasha of bar kapara, and the derasha of bar kapara is a very important derasha, because what it means is that there is an ethical design to man. So we always talk about biological design, and we always talk about in Darwinian evolution, they talk about survival of the fittest, and and adapting to the society, or adapting to society. Adapting to the environment. So animals know how to adapt, and over the course of billions of years, whatever happens, happens. So they give the explanation of adaptation. I don't accept Darwinian evolution, but I'm just describing what it says. For the Hachamim, there is an ethical evolution. And the ethical evolution was that man was designed in a special way, whereby this design has a certain ethical, not a biological function, not for survival, not for the ability to hunt, but because man is an ethical being, God gave him the fingers so that he can stick the fingers in the ears, and if somebody is speaking something inappropriate, maybe nivul peh, maybe lashon hara, whatever the inappropriate thing is, yaniach espe'otav be'oznav. It's a great idea. V'hainu de'amar Rabbi Elazar. Now we're going to bring 3 sources confirming this, right? Each one is going to be more authoritative than the previous. The first is Rabbi Elazar. מפני מה אצבעותיו של אדם דומות ליתדות or litedot. What's the reason that the fingers of a person are similar to hooks? מה טעמה? אילמה משום דמחלקן. Now when you say that, the Gemara is questioning the statement. So when you say that the fingers are similar to hooks, what did you mean by that? Are you saying because they're separate? The 5 fingers, it could have been like a web. There's a midrash. Ze yenahamenu mima'aseh yadenu, right? In before Parashat Noach, and they said that before the Mabul, the hands of man were connected, right? So are you referring to that? Are you referring to, and then after the Mabul, the fingers became separated, right? Are you referring to that? Is that what you mean by hooks? Right? That each one is separate. That's not a good question. Because the answer to the question is very simple. Why are the fingers separated? Actually, I'm sorry. If you say kol hada v'hada, it should be lemilta abida, no? Do you have the Ktav Yad in front of you, Chacham Aron? I'm sorry to. I think it should be lemilta abida, no? Kol hada v'hada lemilta. I don't have the Ktav Yad, but I'm just thinking.
So the printed is lemilta, and yes, and let me see the numbers 3 here. Kol hada v'hada. No, they do. Oh, no, they don't have a note on that.
Okay. So we'll read as it is. Kol hada v'halda lemilte avida. De amar mo zu zeret. Okay. And then,
so milte could make sense because, and this is only in humans, I believe.
Yeah.
Each finger could do a separate function.
Mm-hmm.
So your index finger is used for certain things, and when you twist, it's the combination of the index finger and the thumb. Other society, like when you play the piano, certain fingers do certain jobs uniquely so. I doubt that the apes have fingers, so do some frogs. The frogs have them webbed. Apes have them like we do, but they don't seem to have the same ability with their fingers to do things to their environment. They grab the trees, I know. But I think that's about it. And they grab the food. Do they poke things? Can they make plumbing where you have to twist a nut? I don't think so.
Interesting. That's an interesting point. Okay, so we have the 5 fingers, and again, the question is against Rabbi Elazar. He says, and if you're saying are mehulakot, well, we have the answer. Zu zeret. So zeret is the distance if you outstretch your hand. So zeret would be like from the tip of the pinky to the tip of the thumb. That's called the zeret, right? And the zeret is a measure which is used for Ilchot Shabbat in terms of what's, I believe, for the amount of when a person is gozez, it has to be gozez the amount kimlor or havasid, which I believe is a zeret. Okay, but also it's used for the Kohen Gadol, for the begadim of the Kohen Gadol. We use a zeret. Actually, let me see. Rashi maybe brings it. Let's see what he's. I'm sorry? The Choshen, yes.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so that's Zo Zeret. Zo Kemisa. So Kemisa is the second finger, right? This finger by the pinky. So when you do the Kemisa, let's say, for example, you want to bring a Korban Minchat Solet, or any Minchat, not even Minchat Solet, but it's just a bit easier to visualize. So you have the Solet, you have the flour with the Levona, and with the olive oil, and then the Kohen Gadol would do like this. He would take the three fingers with the komes, this being the komes, and he would stick it in the in the container, holding it, and now he has it between his three fingers, where the komes is closed in on the bottom. Otherwise, the flour will fall. And then he goes to the top of the mizbeach, and he burns it on the top of the mizbeach. That part goes to the mizbeach. The rest is eaten by the Kohanim. It's Kodesh Kadashim. It has the status of Kodesh Kadashim. So it has to be eaten at a high level of Kedusha, be that as it may. So the Komes, the purpose of the Komes, for example, is for the Korban Mincha. Zu Amma. So the Amma is a measure from the top of the index finger till the elbow. And we know there's many Alpaim Amma for Tehumei Shabbat and other laws. Zu Espa. So the Espa, of course, is the finger next to the thumb, right? That's the Espa. And the Espa also has many, for example, when you say Achat Lemala V'Sheva Lemata, right? So the Kohen Gadol, when he brings the Korban Hatat, because there's two types of Korban Hatat, but the type of Korban Hatat that the whole thing is burnt, right, outside the Bet HaMikdash, but then you bring the dam inside to the parochet. So he throws the dam achat lemala, right? He sticks his finger. This is the espa. He puts the espa in the mizrak, and then achat lemala v'sheva lemata. You understand? So that's the espa. And the final one is V'zeh Gudal. So the Gudal has various functions. I think in the Korban Mesorah, the Korban Nazir, other Korbanot, where you have to immerse the bohen in the blood of the Korban. So the point is that when the Rabbi Azar said, he couldn't have been referring to why they separate. I mean, well, they're separate because each one has a separate function. Again, here you see that the design of the body has, an ethical function, or is whatever you want to call it. Maybe you don't like the word ethic. A moral function, or a lofty function, right? So even the fingers of the individual have a specific function, right? So the design of man is a very beautiful design, right? So he says no. Elama ta'am. What was the intention of Rabbi Elazar when he said his intention was meshupot keyetedot, that there's like a if you look at the finger, it's not flat, it kind of closes gradually, and because of that, shemishma adam davar she'enu agun yanichas be'otav be'oznav. So if you hear something that's not hagun, you can stick the fingers inside the ears. If it was just flat, you wouldn't be able to go as deeply. But because it's a little extended inwardly, now you can stick the finger in more deeply, and therefore you can prevent yourself from hearing davar she'eno hagun. And finally, we have a second source now, or second support, or second affirmation of the Derasha Bar Kapara. Tana dever b'Yishmael. So Tana dever b'Yishmael. This is a beraita from the Bet Midrash of Rabbi Yishmael. Tana, the Bet Rabbi Yishmael, is different than the Bet Rabbi Yishmael Tana. The Bet Rabbi Yishmael Tana would mean that there was one of the Tanaim in the Bet Midrash of Rabbi Yishmael said the following. That would be less than Tana, the Bet Rabbi Yishmael Tana. The Bet Rabbi Yishmael means this Beraita was accepted by the Bet Midrash of Rabbi Yishmael, and therefore was part of the collection of Baraitot of the Bet Midrash of Rabbi Yishmael. So Tana, the Bet Rabbi Yishmael, mipnei ma'ozen kulla kasha be'aliyah raka, she'im yishma adam davar she'eno hagun yakuf el aliyah letoch. A similar idea. Why is the lobe of the ear soft? So if a person is hearing something she'eno hagun, he can always put his lobes inside his ear. So again, to prevent immorality. So God created the ear, and the ear allows you to hear, but in the same ear that allows you to hear may result in you hearing something inappropriate. And the same ear, this is even a greater derasha, I would say, than Rabbi Elazar or Bar Kapara, because here the ear itself solves its own problem. Put the earlobe inside the ear, right? Tanu Rabbanan. I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
Just on these topics, it seems like we're kind of switching. Like our original focus is on the hands and the different parts of it that are used for in the mikdash, to serve Hashem, and then we say no, it's actually to prevent you from hearing something that you shouldn't be hearing. It's like we kind of take it from like something that's extremely positive to like the prevention of something negative. Like almost as if there's like not hearing something inappropriate is even on a higher level than doing work in the mikdash.
Yeah. So the idea of hearing was mishum de mechlekan, meaning if it was a work in the mikdash, you wouldn't need to have that pointy end to the finger. The question of Rabbi Elazar was, why is it a pointy end? It could have been like a flat end, right?
Uh-huh.
And to that specific design is so that you can stick the fingers in the ear and prevent yourself from hearing something inappropriate, right? Yeah.
I mean, I think the dirasha here is, does man have a benefit over natural human society, an improvement over, let's say, pre-Adamite society? Yes or no? So I think the Goyim say no. And so we say yes, and here's some examples. Now that ultimately leads to Machon L'Shivtecha Pa'alta Adonai, like we said above, which is the Bet HaMikdash. But you could only have a Bet HaMikdash if all the individuals in the society actually embody some kind of improvement over the pre-Adamites, which is our unique point of view, right? I mean, also the so-called Abrahamic religions are kind of a disaster, and they kill a lot of people. And Judaism is a little bit different. It offers something real, right? That's why I think in the West people are leaving religion, but then somehow they're importing millions and millions of Muslims who are going to take over and fill the vacuum like they already do in England, right? We offer a totally different alternative. We don't need another dark ages ushered in by radical Islam, which may happen.
Yeah, I agree. It may, yes, and it may happen. That's okay. All right, and finally, the Tanu Rabbanan. Al Yashmiya. This is the third and final and most authoritative affirmation of the Derasha of Bar Kapara. Tanu Rabbanan. Al Yashmiya Adam le'ozna devarim betelim mipnei shenichvot tehila la'evarim. Right. So even, but here we see, and the Tanu Rabbanan adds something. Even devarim betelim is, I want to share with you a story. So I was raised by my father. And my father always used to discuss the Divrei Torah, and So sometimes we'd have a wedding. I would be in the wedding. My father would be there, and they would be discussing divrei Torah the whole time. Like this guy, the Gemariot, this and that, arguments and meaning back and forth. And mamash, you saw the, you saw it. Like you felt the, you felt the kedusha. And I saw this in different contexts. Sometimes out of Yosef Mesas, out of David Shlush. I remember when I came to the community. So I was under the chuppah, and the chuppah in the community, you may have noticed, the chuppah ceremony is quite long. I mean, they basically take every Elton John song made since the beginning of his life till this point in time, and they do an instrumental version of that. And then maybe the Hazan will sing a Disney song, a beautiful Disney song, not quite as good as Disney does it, but pretty nice. And things like that. So anyway, so I was like, I remember like there was a few times where there was the Talmidei Chachamim, I thought, under the chuppah, people under the chuppah, and I started discussing Divrei Torah. And they looked at me in a very funny way, like, it was almost like, why do I care? I was really shocked. Like when I first met rabbis, not all rabbis, but there's one or two rabbis that are not like this, incidentally, but maybe less. One or two rabbis that I could, like, actually, if I say a Devar Torah, they actually interest. No, there's one or two rabbis I'm thinking of that if I give them a chidush, they actually, wow, like it's a chidush, thank you, let me share something with you, like, like a discussion. The vast majority of rabbis in the community don't care about Divrei Torah. It's almost, I couldn't believe it. Like, I didn't realize who my father was. I mean, I knew he was a great Hakam, of course, but and then when I came back to the community, and now I'm a rabbi myself, and I was interacting with other rabbis, whatever, like, it's like, but Devarim Betelim, yes, Devarim Betelim, that would be a topic for sure. Devarim Betelim is very interesting. That's always interesting to everybody to discuss. So, in Jewish thinking, and for my father, like, the brain of a Hakam can't take Devarim Betelim, like, waste his time. Like, what are you putting? Do you just blabber in the person's brain? Like, I don't want that blabber in my brain. I mean, I kind of feel it myself sometimes. But be that as it may, Al yashmi adam leoznam devarim betelim. Mipnei she'en nichvot tehila. When they're at Bar Minan, the Romans used to burn people alive. And the first organ to get burnt are the ears, right? So the idea here is that the ears are getting burnt because you heard Devarim Betelim, and you should not have heard Devarim Betelim. Okay? All right, so that's it. That's the end of the sugya. The sugya is very deep. I'm almost I feel, I don't know. But I'm going to teach it. All right. Let's go back to Darash Bar Kapara. Let's take a 2-minute break. Just a 2-minute break. Let's rest my voice a little. Thank you for the finjan. It tastes very good. Yeah. Yes, please. Where's Joey and Nike? מה קרה להם? מה? זה לא בסדר. אי אפשר. I'm going to pause this. Remind me to unpause the video. Mm-hmm. Okay, all right, let's continue. All right, so we're back at the beginning. So there's a certain ambiguity here. When it says Ma'aseh Sadiqim, I understand what Ma'aseh Sadiqim refers to. When it says Ma'aseh Shamayim Va'ares, what does that mean? There's two possibilities. One possibility is that Ma'aseh Shamayim Va'ares means God's Ma'aseh in creating Shamayim Va'ares. So Bereshit bara Elohim et ha-shamayim ve'et ha'aretz. That's one possibility. The other possibility is, no, Ma'aseh Shamayim Va'aretz refers to the Ma'asim of the Shamayim and the Aretz. So the question is, who is the subject? Is the subject God, as in the first possibility? Or is the subject the Shamayim Va'aretz, as in the second possibility? Right? So I'm going to make you aware now of a certain discussion I had with my father. This discussion is based on the Moreh Nebuchim. Chelek Bet, Perek Lamed. And the discussion was as follows, and it's relevant to this sugya. When we say God created Shamayim Ba'aretz, Bereshit bara Elohim esh Shamayim ve'et haaretz, what does this mean precisely? I mean, we're talking about the creation of the cosmos, we know that, but a second after bara Elohim, you point a telescope and you want to look at the cosmos. What would you see? Right? Or put it in other words, did the entire cosmos just come into existence as it is today? Or rather, the cosmos was created in some sort of incomplete way, and then there's a miracle and there's a new creation, and there's a miracle and there's a new creation. You understand? So my father pointed out to me that bara, Bereshit bara Elohim, it's in the past tense, bara. And it appears, or it seems to insinuate, that God created Shamayim Ba'aretz in a instantaneous fashion, right? Some would say, no, there was a progress. Why does it matter? Why does it matter if you say that the cosmos was created instantaneously? Or you say, no, it was actually, there was a progress in the creation of the cosmos. So, again, you take a photo of the universe after creation. What would you see, right? And this has to do with Maaseh Bereshit, right? So the idea of Maaseh Bereshit, the Chachamim discuss Maaseh Bereshit. This is exactly the topic that Maaseh Bereshit has to do with, right? But interesting, the word is Maaseh. So Maaseh means that there's a process. There appears to be some sort of development, right? So process, we call it cosmology, but there's a process by which the world came into being. So this is the topic that I'm trying to understand. My father used to say that Harambam decapitated Aristotle, right? There's this crazy notion among Jewish pseudo scholars that somehow Harambam was, Aristotelian, or he was like, I quoted Albert Einstein, so I must be obsessed with Einstein at a very deep, visceral level, because I quoted him and I respect him. I quoted Galileo. I love Galileo. He's one of my heroes, but my eyes don't twitch when I say the word Galileo, and I don't spit and curse him, so there must be that my religion, I don't know what his religion was, but it's clear that I was deeply affected at the theological level by Galileo, and the proof is I'm writing a book now, and I mentioned Galileo in the book, and I didn't spit, I didn't curse. It's great, very, 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 these scholars, they show tremendous, profound understanding of, Chochmah and Chachamim. But my father said that Harambam decapitated the head of Aristotle. So he says as follows. Suppose you have a child, and the child is abandoned by his parents on a desert island. There's no animals on the island. No animals. Coconuts. So he eats coconuts. Years later, this child is found. So one of the first questions the child is trying to understand is, because there's no animals, where did he come from? Where did I come from? So they explain to him that he's not a child anymore, he's an adult. They explain there's a woman, and there's male, and there's female, there's a woman. And at some point in time, you were in some sac, embryonic sac, and this sac was inside the womb of the woman for 9 months. And eventually, at some point in time, you get out. So the response of this individual will be that you're completely crazy, because you can't survive in a sack in somebody's stomach. You'd suffocate. Right? So on the basis of contemporary physiology, this person rejects embryology. Embryology is the science of how a child develops within the womb, right? So again, on the basis of contemporary physiology, which is if you put a person in a sack, he would suffocate, he rejects embryology. And this is a point of my father and Harambam. Don't confuse cosmology with physics. There are the rules of physics, and the rules of physics explain the contemporary functioning of the universe. And there is the idea of cosmology. And the idea of cosmology in Jewish thinking in Maaseh Bereshit is that the Olam is Nivra. Now, Harambam, in part 2, chapter Perek Lamed, he brings the Midrash, and my father told me he never found the Midrash. Maybe one day I'll find the Midrash. I haven't found it. Let me read to you what he says, actually. Give me a moment. It's, I have the Ibn Tibbon edition. When I used to study the Moreh, I would study the Ibn Tibbon edition with my father, because he had the Arabic, so it didn't really matter. And he liked the Kafech edition, and he didn't like the Kafech edition. Of course, he liked the Kafech edition because Kafech existed in the 20th century, and Hebrew was a much richer language. Meaning Kafech had much more to work with. He didn't like some of the criticisms of Kafech against Ibn Tibbon because he felt it was unfair. I mean, Ibn Tibbon lived in the, century, almost 1,000 years, not 1,000 years, but almost, I'd say, centuries earlier, when Hebrew was a very limited language, right? So he didn't like the criticisms, and also he substantively he disagreed with Kafech on many things, because in order to understand Harambam deeply and correctly, you have to have a very deep understanding of the types of discussions and philosophical issues that people were grappling with back then, and how Harambam addresses and replies to those issues, right? Okay, so anyway, I'm just going to read to you, let me see if I can find it. This is Perek Lamed of Helek Bet. I don't know how to say it, but you have the Ibn Tibbon, it's Daf Shin Zayin, I think. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to read it. ومما שצריך שתדעהו. No, that's not it. Okay, give me that. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Before that. שמילת עת הנאמרת באומרו, עת השמיים ועת הארץ. It says, בראשית ברא אלוהים, because it says, בראשית ברא אלוהים שמיים וארץ. But it says, בראשית ברא אלוהים את השמיים ואת הארץ. כי עבר בארוך החכמים במקומות רבים, שהיא בעניין עם, ירסו בזה שהוא ברא עם השמיים, כל מה שבשמיים, ועם הארץ, כל מה שבארץ. He says, כי עבר בארוך חכמים. That's why my father, he wants to understand איפה, but okay. So it says, et hashamayim. No, that's not mehila. That's not what my father. No. Later on, that was not the question that my father had. But it's like kabed et avicha ve'et imecha. So et lirabot achicha hagadol ve'achotecha hagedola. Right. So et hashamayim ve'et az means God created the shamayim with whatever's in the shamayim, and the aris with whatever's in the shamayim. Meaning, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et aris. To answer that question, had you taken a photograph, you would see the cosmos. It might be smaller than today. Maybe the expansion of the universe would have been less, but you basically would see the cosmos, the existence of the cosmos after the moment of bara Elohim et hashamayim et haaretz would be the complete cosmos, right? Oh, but what about the later on days? It says that in the first day there was On, and the second day there was Rakia, etc. So let's continue. וכבר ידעת באולם כי השמיים והארץ ימלאו יחד, לאומרו קורא אני עליהם יעמדו יחדיו. So it's explicit in ישעיה הנביא. אם כן, הכל נברא יחד. So everything was created. It could not have been created otherwise, because when you study the universe, everything is dependent on everything else. This is why the theory of evolution is an actual intellectual absurdity. I'm amazed that scientists take the theory of evolution seriously. It is an intellectual absurdity because nothing would work without everything else working perfectly and precisely. But okay. I'm not going to get into that now. Let me continue with Rambam. So what happened? But there was a differentiation that took place. And this is where apparently there was a midrash, there was a mashal, and here if you ever find the source, let me know. Okay. We have a farm, and the farmer, he plants things in the soil. And the way he plants a seed, some things will come out in this month, some things will come out the next month, some things will come out the next month. Right? But he planted everything at the same instance. You understand? ושמח כסתם אחר יום, וכסתם אחר שני ימים, וכסתם אחר שלושה. והזריעה כולה הייתה בשעה אחת. So בראשית ברא אלוהים את השמיים ואת הארץ. So in the Shamayim there was already the possibility of Or. And the first day the Or comes out. It wasn't a miracle. It was part of the natural development of the cosmos. Right? ולפי זה הדעת האמיתי בלא ספק, יותר הספק אשר חייב לרבי יהודה בר מימון. Okay. You understand? So is this clear? Are you understand what Rambam is saying? Yeah? So Vayomer Elohim Yehi Or. I had my son Shlomo is here, and we had a very deep discussion because it says Bi'asara ma'amarot nivra ha'olam, right, in Pirkei Avot, Perek. I'm sorry, did I quote that correctly? Yes, okay. So, I thought somebody was correcting me. So, and then if you look at the number of times it says Vayomer, 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 it's actually 9, it's not 10. So Harambam says, so where's the first ma'amar? Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamaim et haaretz. So my son Shlomo, he pointed out, but it doesn't say Vayomer. He said the reason it doesn't say Vayomer is that was the silent ma'amar. All there was God. There was no one to receive the Vayomer, right? It's only after there's a cosmos that you could say Vayomer, the Vayomer that could be heard, right? In the sense, right? But at that point, all there was HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's why it's a silent Vayomer. You understand? I think it's a very deep concept. Okay. So stage 1, God created the entire cosmos. Stage 2, there was a division, there was a differentiation. That's called Maaseh Bereshit. So Maaseh Bereshit describes the differentiation and the development of the cosmos. Yeah. Now, if you go back to here, when it says Gedolim Maaseh Sadikim Yoter mi Maaseh Shamayim Ba'ares, it's referring to the Maaseh Shamayim Ba'ares. It's not referring to Beri'ah Yesh Me'ayin, obviously. Right? You can't say. How can you possibly say? It doesn't say Beri'at Shamayim Ba'aretz. Understand? All right? דאילו במעשה שמיים וארץ כתיב אף ידי יסרה ארץ במיני טיפחה שמיים. ואילו במעשה ידיהם של צדיקים כתיב מכון לשבתך פעלת אדוני מקרא שאדוני כוננו ידיך. Now I want to explain this. First of all, if you look at the Targum Yerushalmi on Mikedash Adonai Konenu Yadecha, you know what it says there? In Targum Yerushalmi? Terei Yadeh. His 2 hands. Oh, you have it?
Yeah, can you see it? Oops, here. There.
Oh, wow. Oh, how do you know to look for that?
I heard it once from your father.
Terei
This is Neofiti.
Yes. Yes.
In case you guys catch it, you guys. Here it is.
Wow, nice. Psst. Okay, great. Fantastic. Tereyade. Right? It actually says that. So this is a source for Bar Kapara. This is a source for Bar Kapara. Tereyade. Okay? So Bar Kapara was probably studying the Targum, Shalayim Mikavah Targum, and it says Tereyade, and he made this Darasha. Okay, now I want to explain this. I want to explain what this means. You understand, Shlomo? So when it talks about the Bet HaMikdash, the Tzaddikim build the Bet HaMikdash, it says, Konenu Yadecha, the 2 hands of God. Meaning, the amkut, and then I'm going to explain it, is there's God, Ma'aseh Shamayim Ba'aretz, there's Shamayim Ba'aretz acting, and they create certain things. So you look at the cosmos, you have galaxies are born, stars are born, that's Ma'aseh Shamayim Ba'aretz. But then you have the Terei Adeh, the second hand of God is the Tzaddikim. When the Tzaddikim create things, right? Human civilization. So I want to ask a question. Who cares? Who cares whether it's one hand or two hands? You understand, Shalom? But it was two hands. He created the universe with two hands. Yeah? Eddie, you understand the question? If it's two hands or one hand. Yeah?
Right. I mean, there must obviously there's a point there, but right. I mean, I see one hand you can only do so much, and two hands you can really coordinate. I suppose, right? You can hold one thing and
so let me ask you a question.
With the other hand.
Let me ask you a question. Is this world the best God could have created? If yes, then this world would somehow be a reflection of God. In which case God would have sort of be created himself. Right? They always say, can God create himself? Okay. No. If he would have created the universe with the full power of God and would be a perfect reflection of God, then the answer to that question would be yes. But we have Af Yadiya Sela Eres. God did not create a perfect cosmos, right? Mm-hmm. God did not use his full force in the creation. As great as the cosmos is, and as incredible as the cosmos is, this doesn't represent God's maximum power, right? So there's the Tzaddikim, and the Tzaddikim are the second hand of God, so to speak, right? So we bring progress to the creation precisely because it's one hand. We can now employ our hand and be God's second hand, so to speak, and there's always a possibility of progress. If it would have been a perfect universe, it would be no progress. Correct. That would be the bottom line. And one of the points that we disagree with Spinoza. My father he didn't like Spinoza at all. He considered him to be a intellectual derelict. But one of the points of Spinoza I never understood is that God's perfection is not reflected in nature. It's not, right? Let's look at Eshivani Bavli Echad. I'm just going to go quickly because I want to finish the class. We've been studying for quite some time now, right? But that's the point of the I'm sorry of the two hands versus the one hand, right? Okay. I'm going to skip. All right. Let's just look at. So that was Maseh Bereshit. So now you understand that. Let's look now a little further about Maseh. What was the pasuk? Yeah. Hashamayim misaperin kavadol Maseh ala Magid Arakia. If you look at Rashi in Maseh ala Magid Arakia, Rashi says the tefillot of the tzaddikim. Where is it? Hayu Maseh alav kemaseh tzaddikim ketiv. Shekeruin maaseh shalahem maaseh ala shakav shluchu, right? Right. So she'asadikim mitpalelin ala geshamim umatar yored. So that's what I'm saying. I'm not sure. It says maaseh yadhem shel tzaddikim. It doesn't say tefilotam shel tzaddikim, right? There's a difference in tefillah. Here we're talking about the maasim of the tzaddikim, not the tefillah of the tzaddikim, right? Now, if you look at there's a midrash Tehillim on this verse, it brings the pasuk v'natati mital asechem be'ito yireu malkosh. So what's v'natati mital asechem be'ito yireu malkosh? When the people, the maasim of the people, are proper, ve'ayim shemua tishmu el misvatai, asher anochi yisrael hayom v'natati mital asechem be'ito yireu malkosh. It's explicit in the midrash Tehillim. So you see the relationship between the maasim of the tzaddikim and the and the rain, right? Meaning, when the tzaddikim act properly, God will bring the rain. By the way, a lot of the natural catastrophes that people are bemoaning, you know, I mean, you can bemoan and bemoan and bemoan, and you know, the Torah can speak, and we can say the same thing, you know, once or twice or three times, but we can't say it, you know, ad infinitum. But at some point, perhaps humanity will wake up and realize that there's a price to pay for hedonism, right? Today, it's almost inappropriate to speak about having values and having being a little circumspect and, you know, a little humble. And if a person has a problem, you know, you don't need to advertise, you know, every problem that a person has, and you know. But whatever. Okay. So there's that. I wanted to discuss that as well. So there's a Maaseh Sadiqim. Let me see if there's something else I wanted to discuss as well. No. Tefillah. I'm just gonna jump ahead because it's getting late. I've received a signal. There's one more thing I want to discuss. Okay, one more thing. So.
Can I make one comment?
Of course, you may make as many comments as you want.
Thank you. I really don't like this comment of Rashi. I would much prefer that he said, I don't know. I didn't figure out the Dirasha. Why? It's a Fromization, if you'll pardon the neologism, of Judaism once again, which is characteristic of the Catholic Middle Ages countries. No, it's not. You don't have to say, oh, it's when the tzaddikim daven. Come on. You don't need to say that. It's okay to say, you know, I don't get the joke of Bar Kapara. He's like Dave Chappelle. You have to really learn the way he sets up narratives in order to get the punchline. You may think you get it, but if you watch him again and again, you see he's doing at several dimensions simultaneously. So if you don't get it, it's okay. You know, Bar Kapara was a master of Agada. If you don't get it in France in the year 1000, it's fine. You don't have to get it. It's a different culture. It's a different rhetoric. You didn't study Melissa in your French yeshivot in the Rhineland. But by filling the vacuum of lack of knowledge with a flip answer, now everybody else is precluded from ever getting the joke, and we're going to suffer through vorts in Shalashudis about, and Rashi says, and we're all going to go to sleep or bite our tongues, you know?
Okay, well. Okay, so yes. I also, you know, my father always used to say, eneni yodea. And the idea of eneni yodea implies the possibility of progress, which is actually what we're talking about here in the sugya. Absolutely. And I'm going to make two final points. We're talking about ethics and the ethical design of the body, and part of the problem of modern Jewish scholarship or academicians is that they approach Judaism through Gentile categories, right? So, you know, you have many fine scholars who write books on Judaism, write books on the Talmud, right? But their first exposure to Judaism, their initial foray into Jewish studies, was through categories which are essentially Gentile categories, and this is a big problem. This is one of the reasons people don't understand the Monei Nebuchim properly. This is one of the reasons that people have all types of intellectual problems, and so be it. But there was a great Chacham that you all heard of, Rabbi David Nieto, and he wrote a book called De la Divina Providencia. I think, am I pronouncing that correctly? You're muted. Unmute yourself.
Providencia.
Providencia. Okay, and here he goes into discussion of nature, and his thesis is that in Greek thinking you have God, and you have nature, and in Judaism we reject the distinction between God and nature. We view God as the actor of all things that we call natural. So we call this natural. It's actually God acting in the cosmos that he created. So there is no nature. Nature doesn't exist. So that's why we say Hammosi le'achaminas. Actually have kavanah, especially if it's a good bread, a good, nice bread, leil Shabbat, Hammosi le'achaminas. Actually think how God gave me this specific loaf of bread. There was wheat growing somewhere, and there was a millstone, and they made the flour and the bread. So Hammosi. Now he's Mosi lachamina aris. This bread, right? So the idea of nature is a Gentile category, and that's the idea of Rabbi David Nieto. So what God created And what Shamayim Ba'aretz do is the same thing. Meaning, we say Gedolim Ma'aseh Shamayim Ba'aretz. And I explained that the subject is Ma'aseh Shamayim Ba'aretz. It's a Shamayim and the Aretz. But that's the way God acts. Hamhadesh betuvo bechol yom tamid Ma'aseh Bereshit. So God acts through the Shamayim and the Aretz, right? There's a great Rabbeinu Saadia Gaon. It says Shabbat, ubayom hashavi Shabbat, Nafash. So what does it mean Shabbat by Nafash? So by Nafash literally means like you're doing something and you're exerting and then by Nafash. So my father asked me, how can you say God by Nafash? So he told me no. Rabbeinu Saadia Gaon says by making us rest, that's God, Shabbat by Nafash. You understand? Shabbat by Nafash, us. Right? So now, on this point, Rabbi David Nieto was accused of pantheism. There was actually Ashkenazi Chacham at the time. His name was Rabbi Yaakov Emden. Apparently, he was a fine Talmid Chacham, as I understand. People say he was the greatest Ashkenazi posek in his days, maybe. But I think my father had a certain level of respect for him. And he wrote a Pesach. And in the Pesach, he said that Rabbi David Nieto's thesis is in perfect accord with Jewish thinking. He came to the defense of Rabbi David Nieto. And I want to tell you what pantheism is so that you understand what it's not. Pantheism is not conflating God with nature. Pantheism is to conflate the world with God. You see the difference? We believe there is no nature, there is God, and God is what does Ma'aseh Shamayim Ba'aretz. He makes the world do what it does. The pantheists believe that the world is God. Okay, that's not at all what Rabbi David Nieto said. Okay, I think I'm going to stop here. I think I said enough. You can look at the sugya, you can look at the pesukim, you can understand now what the pesukim are saying. I have to say that it was a zechut that we studied with my father, and because of this, we really can understand things in the Gemara that are just beautiful. Yekarahi mi peninim. Okay, if there's any questions or comments.
One comment, I think the best thing we can do as a group, even though there's only 5 people here and rarely does it get more than 20, is to review, and which means to master in our own minds, every sugya that your father ever taught. That's enough. So they said about Carl Jung, he was great, right? And he had students, more than half of which were Jewish. Those students recognize we don't have to create another Jung. He was just one generation before us. What we have to do is organize, catalog, represent, master, and pass on to 3 generations down, which won't directly understand what Jung was saying, what he said. But so we don't have to be another Haham Fa'ur. I mean, if someone is, that's wonderful. All we really have to do is collect all of his teachings in a way that can be passed. And if we're the only ones in the universe doing that, so be it. Maybe somebody else one day will pick it up. But if we don't do that, it might get lost.
I think that's a great point. I very much, that point very resonates strongly with me, and I actually feel that like as I get a little older, I'm thinking how I just want to study the sugyot that my father taught, and also the Iyunim b'Mishneh Torah, and really like just teach it, and that should be it. That's what if that's what I do in whatever years God gives me and gives us. Dayenu, I'll be happy.
Absolutely. Yeah, that would be fantastic if we could do that.
Great, thank you very much. So all the best to Skula Mitzvot, and I'll be in touch with maybe we'll do a future class Sunday, or we'll see what it is.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Okay.